Hello, everyone. Welcome to Azure Community Live in 2021. We had some technical issues with our guest, Brian, but everything worked out fine, I think. So please let us know in the chat when something is not working, when you can't hear us. So I think everything works fine now. Welcome, Brian.
Yep.
And welcome, Esteban.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So everyone, my name is Esteban Garcia, based in the U.S. and heard from the Netherlands, my co-host, and we have Brian Minisi, who is a principal consultant at Nudesic. He's a Microsoft MVP and ALM Ranger, frequent speaker at code camps and user groups. He is an organizer of the Philly ALM user group and also the Philly Azure user group, so very involved in the community. Brian's also a board member of Tech Bash, and he's been working with Microsoft technology for a long time, since 1998. Brian and I have actually known each other for 10 years or so. So thanks, Brian, for joining us. For those of you out there, as you may know, Azure Community Live is an online meetup about Azure for the community, by the community. If anyone in the future wants to join us and speak, we would love to have you here. But today we're going to be talking about how to work with ARM templates, how to make it easier for you to work with ARM templates using something called Project Bicep. So Brian, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us about this Project Bicep and ARM templates and anything else you want to tell us about.
Okay.
So let me quickly check the audio before we dive into the subject. So one moment. Because my phone now is also on the... it's annoying. So I think it should work. One moment. Yeah, so it's working now. Okay, great. I just wanted to be sure before we dive into the content that everything was working technically. So yeah, let's go ahead with the actual topic.
All right. So this is just a slide saying we're at Tech Bash in October, from October 19th to the 22nd in Kalahari. If you're interested, just go to techbash.com. It's a great conference. Esteban's been there a few times. Oh, you have? Great. Oh, okay. Yeah, we didn't have it last year because of COVID, but it looks like we're going to have it this year. So I'm excited about that. All right, so let's talk about Project Bicep. So as you know, with Azure, you have a number of different ways you can do infrastructure as code. You can use Terraform, you can use other third-party tools, or you can use ARM templates. So ARM templates is built into Azure. It's really what it can do, practically anything that you want in Azure, but it is very complicated to use and it's a very high learning curve. So Project Bicep is trying to address those issues of complexity that people have been complaining about for years. So it's a domain-specific language specific for ARM templates. It's a Python type of language, and it gives you a declarative way to create your ARM templates. And that abstraction makes it very easy to actually go in and create these things, because it's more of a familiar language to most developers rather than a JSON ARM template. And the great thing about it is that when you compile a Bicep file, it compiles right down to a regular ARM template, so you can deploy it the same way that you deploy any ARM template. So the goals of Project Bicep is that abstraction layer of the underlying platform so that people can pick it up and learn it much easier. Also, reuse of code, modularization is a key thing, so we're not copying and repeating the same code over and over again. And we want to be able to have a language that can actually validate and check to see if the syntax and everything is okay before you even compile it. So it gives you IntelliSense, it gives you the ability to fail on a compile before it creates the ARM template, which with ARM templates in general, you don't really know until you actually try to deploy it. So It's still in alpha. It's an experimental language. It's in version 0.2. So it's not really for production right now. I think production is going to be version 0.3 when it comes out. So right now there's some missing things that are fairly minor, but for example, there's no support for the copy property, which I've used in the past, but it's not something that most people use all the time. And also you don't have the ability to create single line objects and arrays, which isn't a big deal either. It's just we like to do single line and these types of things, but that will be coming. And also there's no native support in PowerShell or AZCLI yet. So when 0.3 comes out, version 0.3, it will be covered by support plans. All right, so let's get started here. Okay,
it's
so
really early days.
All right, so I'm going to be turning my head because my other monitor's here. So if you go to GitHub, there's an Azure Bicep repo, and this is where the development is happening. We can see that it's still in 0.2 over here. Everybody can see this okay?
Yeah.
And the way you would install it is going to this GitHub repo and go to installing the tooling. And there are a number of different ways you can install it. So the easiest way for Windows, of course, is to go to the latest Windows installer and click here. And this will do everything as far as adding the path variables and everything else that you need to have ready so that you can use it. There's also Visual Studio Code extension for it that gives you that IntelliSense and that ability to see as you're typing what is available to you. So you can go to either a marketplace or do it straight within Visual Studio Code to get the Bicep extension. All right, so let's go and actually look at this in detail. All right. So we have here a ARM template. Now this is a very, very simple ARM template. It's just creating an app service plan and an app service. Was there a question? Oh, you mean for the, yeah, sure. Hold on a second.
Yeah, especially in VS Code, it's a bit small. So maybe make it a bit bigger so the audience can see it better.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right, good. Okay, so we have here the ARM template. We have parameters and not a whole lot. Site name, hosting plan, the SKU. And then we have our resources. And we can see here, this is the app service plan, and this is what it takes to write out an app service plan in a regular ARM template. So that's kind of wordy, but you can imagine how wordy it gets when you have complex ARM templates. This is a very simple one. And then here we have our section here for our app service or our web app. So all these things will create the app service plan and the web app for us in Azure when we go to deploy it. But let's see what this looks like when we do this in Bicep. So let's go to our Bicep file. So basically it's a file that you just create with the .bicep extension in it. And here, this is where we would go and create the declarations of our resources within it. So the first thing we want to do is tackle the parameter section. So we have site name, hosting plan, and SKU. So let's type that. So as far as that is concerned, it's just like a regular language. So we do param site name, and we give it the type, which is a string. Now the next one will be the hosting plan. That is also a string. And then we need the SKU. Type in the SKU name. Here we'll give it a default. and we'll make it S1. That will be our SKU, and we're going to add something new here. We're going to add tags. So this is going to be an object called tags. And we will put this in an object array. Like I said before, you have to do this in in multi-line right now. So the date is 2/5/2000. It's 2021, right? And the next thing we'll do is just add an owner. Okay, so this is our parameter declaration, and this is equivalent to all of this here. So you can see it's a little bit less wordy and easier to read. So the next thing we want to do is establish what are our resources that we're going to be using. So the way we would do that in Bicep is first use the resource keyword. And we want to just give it a name in case we need to reference this resource in subsequent resources that we're using. But what type of resources is going to be? This is where we have some nice IntelliSense that we can use. So it's going to be Microsoft Web. And server arms. And we're going to use the most recent one. So here we'll go in and then specify what our definition is going to be for our app service plan. So we have a name property that's required, and we have IntelliSense here. So this is going to give us the name of our hosting plan, which is right there, our parameter. And the next thing we're going to do is our location. Where are we going to be applying this or deploying this to, which region? So here we can use the regular ARM template functions to do this, such as resource group, location. So that's nice. All these things are available to us. And as far as the SKU, we're going to use our SKU name parameter with the name property. And finally, what we will do is add our tags within here. And we'll use our tags parameter. All right, so this is our whole definition for our app service plan compared to here. So, I mean, there are more lines of code here, but the thing is that it's a lot easier to actually do it in a Python type of way, in a language that we understand. So the next thing we want to do is create the web app. So once again, I'm going to use the resource keyword, and we're going to call this website in case we need to use it later on. So once again, we're going to tell it what the type is. And here we're going to say site, and we're going to use the same version. And let's apply this. So we have a name that we need to give it, and we'll use this site name parameter up here. And you can see we also have IntelliSense saying there are things that are missing here. So these are things you don't get in the normal ARM template. You don't know this stuff until actually you try to deploy it. So the next thing that we're going to have is location again. And this is going to be our resource group location. And finally, what we're going to do is tell it what the app service plan is. So this is a property section. And with this app service plan, we just have to say server farm ID and use our name here because this is our app service plan. So service plan and then ID. So this is our whole representation of our ARM template here. And you'll see here, we don't have to necessarily do depends on, because that will be done automatically, since we're telling it in the properties what is a service plan ID. So since we have this now created, we need to compile it. So when we go to compile it, what we do is we just run the commands to, which is an easy command to compile. So it's bicep build, and then we just have to name the, tell it where the bicep file is. So let's do this.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
And you compile it. What happens behind the scenes? Like an ARM template gets created, or what happens when you compile? Okay.
Yep. So I've just compiled it, and we can see over here, it created a JSON file with the same name as the bicep file. So this is our ARM template, and this is what we would compile to if we have pipelines or things that an automated pipeline. We want to compile it to an ARM template so we can deploy it as an ARM template. So it has, this is the result of it. We have our parameters, and we have our definition of our app service plan with our tags, and we have our app service, and we can see here it automatically added a depends on for us. So that is great. It takes away a lot of the detail that we need to write normally in an ARM template. So this is about 48 lines cut down to about 24. So that's a lot of savings right there. So I'm going to delete this. But if you also have ARM templates that are already created, we can decompile them too. So let's see if we go here, we have this ARM template. Let's see if we can decompile this into a bicep file. So I'm going to go to the environment folder. And what I'm going to run here is a decompile command to do this. So it's bicep decompile. And you just have to give it the name of the path to the JSON file. In this case, it's Azure deploy.json. What this is going to do is the opposite. It's going to create a bicep file with the same name. So let's run this. All right, so we have a bicep file now. And let's take a look at what it looks like. So this has some things in it that we don't necessarily need to write. I mean, if we wanted to have the allowed values here, we could allow that. We have some metadata stuff. And we also can see that it was using an older version. This JSON file was using the 2015. So we want to make it exactly the same. We would just go over here and change this to our newer version of this resource. There's some things here that we don't need, such as properties. We already have the name of the hosting plan up here. And we really don't need to touch this, except we don't need this depends on, because the depends on is going to be created already from this properties that we have right here. So if we have ARM templates, a library of ARM templates that we want to convert over to bicep files, we can use that decompile command, and will get us 95% there, and then we could do some cleanup. So let me push this to the repo. And what I want to show now is, it's great to do this stuff locally, but where we really want to do this is in automated pipelines. So I'm going to show you how to do this using Azure pipelines and also using GitHub Actions.
Brian, while you pull that up, I know that you said that this is alpha. What is the how much of an ARM template is supported? Like, is everything in ARM templates, everything that is in ARM template supported, or is like a subset of what ARM template support that Bicep supports?
It supports everything that an ARM template supports, except for those few things that I mentioned earlier, such as the copy property. But all those things, when it becomes production ready,
Like in terms of resources, like everything in PAS and IaaS and things like that, that ARM template supports are supported already.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep, exactly. And that's what's great about it. So this stuff is brand new. I think we heard about it maybe a couple months ago. So it's something that's still being developed, and all of those gaps that it has now won't be there. They're going to fill in all those gaps. All right, so I pushed my Bicep file to my repo. So now let's go to my Azure pipelines and take a look at the pipeline. So one thing I want to point out with Azure pipelines is that there is no built-in way to compile a Bicep file, which is unfortunate. I hope they add it. Whereas in GitHub Actions, they do have it, a built-in action to compile it. But at this point, I used something that Nick Randolph wrote and brought it into my repo, which compiles it and allows you to do it as a template. So he wrote this Bicep YAML, and it's pretty complicated if you go look at the repo where he has this stuff. It's very complicated. So like I said, hopefully we'll have this as a task in the marketplace that we can use for Bicep. So what is this going to do is it's going to compile it, add it to the artifacts, and then we're going to do a regular ARM deployment to our dev environment. So it's going to treat it here as a JSON file because that is what it's going to produce. So we'll deploy it as a ARM template. So let's run this and see what happens.
But when you say you really need a task to actually compile it, you could also use just a CLI from within the agent, right?
Yes, you could do that and then push the JSON to your repo and do it that way too. Yep, that's an option.
Because in the end, it will just be an ARM template that you will deploy. It will be. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But we're treating it as code, the Bicep file. So when we do automated pipelines and deployments, we compile the code within the pipeline, and that's what gives us that feedback. We can put rules and unit tests and other things around it to verify that it's going to work. So yes, you can get around it by just compiling it locally and pushing the JSON file, but ideally we would want to compile it in the pipeline.
Is there any validation on the Bicep files itself?
Yes.
Or is it just a compile action?
When you compile it, well, we have the IntelliSense, and that gives us the ability to see if there's a problem right from developer when we're developing it. But also it won't compile if there's a problem with it. It will fail the compilation.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least that's faster than deploying just ARM templates, right?
Right.
And all the ARM templates that come out of the compile, they always work? Or is that, have you ever run into ARM templates that you compiled through Bicep that still had some issues? Maybe there were some wrong references, or does then the compiler fail? No,
I mean, if you wrote it correctly, then it always seems to work. Now, of course, this is brand new. I haven't really tried it with very, very complex ARM templates. So maybe there would be an issue like that, but I haven't come across anything yet.
Okay. Because otherwise the feedback loop with the ARM templates can be quite long, right? You deploy it and it says, oh yeah, this name does not exist or something. But
you don't know, right? You don't know until you're deploying it. So you can see these are all the steps that it went through to compile it. A lot of stuff's going on here. Okay, so now we're going to just wait for the deployment. And we're going to have it in a resource group with Azure Com in the name. And while that's going, I'll just show you the library, the variable group.
Yeah, I have a question from the chat. Someone asked, would you rather choose to store the bicep files in source control, or would you have it compiled as a developer just on your machine and then store the actual ARM template?
I would have the bicep file in source control, because it's just like any other code file, Python script,
Yeah.
batch file, anything.
Okay.
So yes, put it in the repo, the bicep file, not necessarily the JSON file, and then you compile it in the pipeline, and it creates it on the agent, and it all happens separately on the agent, and then you can deploy it. So these are the variables that are going to be used. And it looked like it succeeded. Okay, good. By the way, I think we have to look into this. This started popping up yesterday or the day before, if anybody has noticed this. I have to look into that a little bit more. Okay, so let's go see what we have here. And here's our resource group. And here are our resources that have just been created. So if we go to the app service plan, see we have everything that we set up, including the tags. So it worked. So yes, I would write in Bicep, put the Bicep file in source control, and then compile the Bicep file within a pipeline. So as I said earlier, the GitHub has this already built in, which is pretty awesome. So let's go over to our to GitHub and see what's going on there. So let's go to our branch. And this is our workflow file. And what we did here in pipelines had to be done on a Windows machine, because it fails if it's done on a Linux machine right now with the with what Nick Randolph has. At least I couldn't get it to work. Maybe it does. But over here in Actions, we can use Ubuntu or any Linux flavor that we need. So our action file says run our Bicep build, and we can see here that this is a actual action that's built in by Alien Cube. So that's all we have to do is add it, and then we can output it as an artifact. So if we go to Actions, let's go and run this. And I'll run our workflow. And this happens pretty quickly. So it's building. And it's building on a Linux machine. Okay, now it's checking out the repo, and we are done. So what this just did, we're not deploying from here, but what this just did was compile the Bicep file into a ARM template. So we go to summary, we can go look at our artifact. And let's double click this and bring us to Visual Studio Code. And this is what was built by GitHub. So the same thing. So we have the ability to use this in automated pipelines, Azure pipelines. Still have a little bit of work to do in order to create ability to compile it. But in GitHub Actions, it's there already, and we can use it. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend using this until it's in at least version 0.3. I think that's going to be the production version. So we'll see. At least it will be supported once we get to version 0.3. So that's about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Brian. I can see, having gone through plenty of painful moments with ARM templates, I can see how much easier this is. Would you say that for someone to be able to be effective with Bicep, do they need to understand ARM templates pretty well first, or like what comes first? Like, you get good at ARM templates and then use Bicep, or can you just jump right into Bicep to generate ARM templates without really understanding ARM?
Right. I mean, you need to understand Azure, of course, and the resources in Azure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you necessarily have to understand ARM templates, but understanding ARM templates makes the learning curve a whole lot easier, because you already know what to do. It's just a much easier way of doing it. So there would be a learning curve, but as I said before, the syntax of this is pretty simple. It's a resource. You name the resource and you tell it what resource it is. So you may not know this, and you may not know, the things that it takes to create a resource in Azure through an ARM template. So that might be a learning curve right there to understand what are the properties and parameters that need to be passed in. That's where understanding ARM templates really helps.
Do you have to be a Python expert?
No,
or just, okay.
I'm not a Python expert. So, and this was super easy for me to do.
Yeah, I got it. What about Terraform might try to answer a similar question or similar problem. Why would people say I want to invest my time into Bicep instead of going Terraform or something like that?
Well, Terraform is also easier than ARM templates. It's a YAML syntax, and it also abstracts a lot of that detail away from us that ARM templates does not. So this is really addressing the needs of people that like Terraform and go to third-party tools to do this kind of stuff because of the ease of use.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Terraform has some other nice features, like first planning and then applying it. ARM has this as well, but yeah, Bicep is still something that you use in combination with ARM, so you still need to deploy, compile it to ARM, and then you could do the what if scenarios. I'm really hoping that in a while we can just deploy the Bicep files directly to Azure, right? I think that's the scenario where we're moving to. Is that something you see as well?
I see it always compiling to an ARM template itself and still using the ARM template approach as far as deploying an ARM template. You would still use the Azure Resource Manager deployment mechanism. Once you have that ARM template, you can use PowerShell or AZCLI to deploy. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I heard it exactly.
Yeah, I think what I would expect in the end is that Microsoft just updates their Azure CLI, so I can just send the Bicep file directly, and they will compile it for me when I send the file. Right? Why would I compile it first? It only takes more time, and things can go wrong. Of course, it's a part of the feedback loop, so you know that stuff goes that's working correctly, maybe, but still, I think having something like a plan and then apply with Terraform is quite powerful. So you actually know what will change in your environment. So yeah, I would like to see that all built into Bicep as well.
We don't want a state file.
No, I just wanted Azure to do that natively for me. Just send the Bicep file, say, okay, I'll create these resources, change this, delete this. That's it.
Right.
Also, I thought that the decompile from an ARM template to Bicep, that's pretty awesome. Like if it really does work consistently, and I can throw, whatever ARM template file I have, super simple or super complex one, and it gives me consistent results. That's awesome. That'd be that would help a ton in terms of people being able to use this, because now we have 5 years or more worth of ARM templates already that people need to start. Like, if we're going to be using this, can't just throw that out. So that's great.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm curious how smart it will be with all the logic, like concatenations and those kinds of things. If you decompile that from an ARM template, it really depends on how the ARM template was created, right? It could be a generated ARM template from the portal, or it could be something that was really put a lot of effort in by someone who knows ARM.
Right. So, the ones that are created by the portal, they also don't get you fully there. You still have to go in and tweak things. Especially if you try to export one from created resources already, it's too specific to that resource that you created, so you would have to generalize it. But yeah, no, I see your point.
How big is the community around Bicep today? I know it's an open source project out on GitHub, but like how active it is? Is it mostly Microsoft people, or is there people from the community also contributing?
That's a good question. So we could go to here and see all the contributors on the GitHub site. So it looks like there are 48 contributors.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, but it's still really alpha phase right now, right? So
Yeah. But what's interesting here is that it's all C#.
Wow.
96.8%.
Awesome. So
great.
Brian,
So let's contribute.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's everyone who's watching, go out and contribute, and let's make this even better. Brian, I appreciate your time. This is really fascinating, really exciting stuff. I have worked with ARM templates from almost the very beginning, and I've gone through a lot of painful moments. Also, it's so powerful, but at the same time, you have to get so good at the syntax to be able to make it do what you know. So having something that lowers the bar of entry into ARM and using something that removes the pain from me is great. So I appreciate you sharing this with us, and hopefully people who are watching, they'll get some ideas and go and contribute to the project and use it in their non-production environments yet, but pretty soon use it for production. So thank you, Brian, for joining us and sharing this information with us.
Yeah, I think
No problem.
ARM is really powerful, but I don't know anyone who really loves ARM, right? Nobody loves writing those really big JSON files. So having some newer solutions to this is always good. Yeah. So thanks very much for explaining this to all the viewers. It's really helpful. And if you like the video, everyone who's watching, or if you're watching it live now or watching a recording, please like the shows that you actually like, so we know what kind of subjects we should add in the future as well. So if you liked it, please press some thumbs up on this video, so yeah, we can build more content like this with people from the community like Brian. So if you want to share your knowledge about Azure, please let us know. We're planning several other sessions the coming months. Of course, it was a hard time for us as well during the whole COVID lockdown, curfews, all those kind of things that are happening right now. So this was the first of 2021, and I think there will be many to follow.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it was great. So with that, I think it's time to wish everyone a good weekend. At least here it's the weekend already. You still have a couple of hours to work, I guess. It's lunchtime around now for you.
Lunchtime here. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, let's wrap up and see you all next time.